The dust had barely settled on Thomas Abbott's grave when the men started circling, vultures in Sunday suits. But Sarah Abbott knew she'd rather die alone than marry again in 1878 Colorado territory. Sarah stood at the window of her small ranch house 5 miles outside of Durango, watching the sun paint the San Juan Mountains gold and crimson. Her hands gripped a cup of coffee gone cold, her knuckles white against the porcelain. She was 26 years old and felt ancient. Thomas had been dead for 3 months, taken by a fever that swept through town last winter, and already the proposals had started coming. First it was Harold Perkins from the general store, a man twice her age with tobacco-stained teeth and wandering hands. Then came Robert Walsh, the banker, who made it clear he was more interested in her 160 acres than in her. The ranch was small but profitable, with 30 head of cattle, a decent water source, and enough grazing land to support twice that number. Thomas had worked himself nearly to death building it up, and Sarah had worked right alongside him. She knew every fence post, every water hole, every difficult patch of ground. This land was hers now, legally and morally, and she would be damned before she handed it over to some man just because society said a woman could not manage alone. But managing alone was harder than she had anticipated. The cattle needed to be moved to higher pasture before summer fully set in. The south fence line had 3 posts down from the spring storms. Her best mare was due to foal any day, and Sarah was not entirely confident in her ability to handle a difficult birth on her own. Thomas had always managed the heavier work while she handled the accounts, the garden, the cooking, and helped where she could with the animals. Now everything fell on her shoulders. She heard hoofbeats approaching and tensed. Another proposal, probably. She set down her coffee cup and smoothed her dark hair, pulled back in a practical bun. Her dress was simple calico, faded from washing, patched at the elbows. She had no patience for vanity these days, but when she opened the door, it was not one of her persistent suitors. Instead, a lean cowboy sat astride a dusty paint horse, leading a lame roan. The cowboy swept off his hat, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of summer grass. He was young, perhaps 30, with the weathered skin of someone who spent his life outdoors and a crooked smile that suggested he found something amusing about the world. "Afternoon, madam," he said. "Name's Grant Jameson. I'm awful sorry to trouble you, but my horse picked up a stone and came up lame about a mile back. I was hoping you might have a place I could rest him for a spell, maybe pull that stone if you've got the tools. I can pay for the trouble." Sarah studied him carefully. He did not have the look of a drifter exactly. His clothes were worn but clean, his saddle well maintained. His hands on the reins were calloused and competent. She made decisions quickly these days because she had to. "I have tools," she said. "Bring him to the barn." Grant dismounted with easy grace and led both horses toward the small barn. Sarah followed, assessing him as they walked. He moved like someone comfortable in his own skin, without the swagger some cowboys affected. When they reached the barn, he tied his good horse and then carefully examined the lame roan's hoof. "There's the culprit," he said, pointing to a wedged stone. "You got a hoof pick?" Sarah handed him one from the tool rack. She watched as he worked with gentle efficiency, murmuring to the horse, keeping his touch light. The stone came free after a moment, and he examined the hoof carefully for any damage. "Just bruised, I think," he said. "He'll need rest for a day or two, though. I don't suppose you know of anyone in town who might board him. I saw your place from the road and hoped you could point me right." "Town is 5 miles," Sarah said. "Your horse would not make it that far today without making the injury worse. You can board him here tonight. There's an empty stall." "25 cents for the night, feed included." Grant studied her for a moment, those green eyes thoughtful. "That's generous, madam. I appreciate it." He paused. "You run this place yourself?" Here it came. Sarah stiffened. "I do." "Must be a lot of work for one person." "I manage." He nodded slowly, looking around the barn. Sarah saw it through his eyes and tried not to feel defensive. The barn was clean but showed signs of neglect. One stall door hung crooked on its hinges. The hayloft ladder had a broken rung. These were things Thomas would have fixed immediately, but Sarah had been focused on more urgent matters. "I can see you do," Grant said, and there was no mockery in his voice. "I'll get my horse settled, then be on my way. I can camp up in those hills tonight and come back for him tomorrow evening." "Suit yourself," Sarah said. She turned to leave, then paused. Against her better judgment, she added, "I suppose you will need supper before you go. I have stew left from yesterday." Grant's face brightened. "Madam, I would be grateful. Trail rations get old fast." They walked back to the house in silence. Sarah ladled out 2 bowls of venison stew and cut thick slices of bread. They ate at her small kitchen table, and Sarah found herself studying him between bites. He had good manners, she noticed. He did not talk with his mouth full or grab for seconds without asking. He complimented her cooking with sincerity. "This is the best meal I have had in 2 months," he said. "I have been working a cattle drive from Texas up to Wyoming. Just finished, and I am heading back south, thinking I might find ranch work in New Mexico territory before winter." "Long way to travel," Sarah observed. "I like seeing country. Besides, I am not one for staying in one place too long. I get restless." He mopped up the last of his stew with bread. "What about you, Mrs. Abbott?" "Sarah Abbott, Mrs. Abbott. Have you been ranching long?" "My husband and I started this place 4 years ago. He died 3 months back." She said it flatly, without emotion. She had learned that was the only way to get through it. Grant's expression sobered. "I am sorry for your loss. That must be terribly hard." Something in his tone made Sarah look up sharply. There was genuine sympathy in his eyes, not the calculating look she had seen from other men. No assessment of her availability, no consideration of her property. Just human kindness. "Thank you," she said quietly. They finished eating in companionable silence. When Grant stood to leave, he paused at the door. "Mrs. Abbott, I noticed that stall door in your barn. If you have the hardware, I could fix it tomorrow when I come for my horse." "No charge, just to say thanks for your hospitality." Sarah's first instinct was to refuse. She did not need charity, but practicality warred with pride, and practicality won. That door had been bothering her for weeks. "Hardware is in the tack room," she said. "I would appreciate it." Grant nodded and settled his hat back on his head. "I will see you tomorrow evening, then. Thank you again for the meal and for boarding Duke." Sarah watched him ride away on his paint horse, heading toward the hills where the last light was fading. She felt an odd twinge of something she could not quite name. Not attraction, certainly. She was done with men, but perhaps it was just the simple pleasure of decent human company. It had been a long time since she had talked to anyone who was not trying to get something from her. The next morning, Sarah woke before dawn as always and went about her chores. She milked her 2 cows, fed the chickens, collected eggs, and brought fresh hay to the horses. Grant's roan nickered at her when she entered the barn, and she took a moment to check his hoof. The swelling had gone down. He would be fine to travel in another day. She spent the morning working on her accounts. Thomas had always praised her head for figures, and she needed every bit of that skill now. The numbers were tight. She needed to sell 6 head of cattle by fall to make her loan payment to the bank, but cattle prices were down this year. She might need to sell 8, which would cut into her breeding stock. The worry gnawed at her constantly, a low-grade anxiety that never quite went away. In the afternoon, she rode out to check the south fence line. The damage was worse than she had thought. Not 3 posts down, but 5, and several lengths of wire would need replacing. She stared at the broken fence and felt exhaustion wash over her. This would take 2 full days to repair, time she did not have with a dozen other tasks demanding attention. She was still out at the fence when she heard hoofbeats. Grant Jameson rode up on his paint horse, and Sarah felt an odd flutter of something in her chest. She squashed it immediately. "Afternoon, Mrs. Abbott," he called. "I came a bit early. Hope that's all right." "Your horse is in the barn," Sarah said. "Help yourself." Grant dismounted and walked over to the fence line, studying it with a practiced eye. "This is quite a bit of damage. Spring storms." "Yes. I have been meaning to get to it, but—" She trailed off, not wanting to admit how overwhelmed she felt. "But there are only so many hours in a day, and you are one person." Grant crouched down, examining one of the broken posts. "These need to be pulled and reset. You have replacement posts." "I can cut some from the timber up in the high meadow." Grant nodded thoughtfully. He looked at her, and Sarah saw him weighing something in his mind. "Mrs. Abbott, I wonder if I might make you a proposition." Sarah stiffened. "I am not interested in marriage proposals, Mr. Jameson." To her surprise, he laughed. It was a warm, genuine sound. "No, madam, I was not proposing marriage. I can see you are managing on your own just fine and do not need a husband. But you do need help with the heavy work, and I need a place to stay for a few weeks before I head south. What if I worked for you? Room and board plus, say, $15 a month. I can do fence repair, handle the cattle, any heavy lifting you need. You can keep running your ranch your way. I would just be your hired hand." Sarah stared at him. It was not a marriage proposal. He was offering to work for her, to take her orders. She would still be in charge of her own land. The idea was so unexpected that she did not know what to say. "Why would you want to do that?" she finally asked. "You said you were heading to New Mexico territory." Grant shrugged. "New Mexico will still be there in a month or two. And to be honest, Mrs. Abbott, I have been on the trail for a long time. It might be nice to stay put for a bit, sleep in a real bed, eat real food. This place seems as good as any." He paused. "Besides, it does not sit right with me, riding away when I can see you need help. Call it my mother's influence. She always said to help folks when you can." Sarah wanted to refuse. She had sworn she would do this alone, that she would never depend on a man again. But Grant was not asking to take over. He was offering to be her employee, her partner in keeping this ranch running. There was a difference, was there not? "I do not have a hired hand's quarters," she said slowly. "Just the barn." "Barn's fine. I have slept in worse. And I cannot pay $15 a month. I can do 10, and that is stretching it." "10 is fine." Sarah took a deep breath. "Then you have a job, Mr. Jameson, but I am the boss here. What I say goes." Grant extended his hand, and after a moment Sarah shook it. His grip was firm and warm. "You are the boss, Mrs. Abbott. I am just here to help." They worked together that afternoon on the fence line, and Sarah was impressed despite herself. Grant was a skilled worker, efficient and strong. He pulled the broken posts with ease and helped her mark where the new ones should go. They would need to cut timber tomorrow, he said, but today they could at least clear the damage and get ready for repairs. As the sun began to set, they rode back to the ranch house together. Sarah felt strange having company, but it was not entirely unpleasant. Grant had an easy way about him, comfortable with silence but ready with a comment when one was needed. He did not pry into her business or offer unwanted advice. He just worked. That evening, Sarah made dinner for two while Grant settled himself in the barn. She had made extra biscuits and fried up salt pork with beans. It was simple food but filling. When she rang the dinner bell, Grant appeared promptly, his hands and face freshly washed. "You did not have to ring a bell," he said with amusement. "I could smell your cooking from the barn." They ate together again, and this time the conversation flowed a bit more easily. Grant told her about the cattle drive, about the rivers they had crossed and the storms they had weathered. He had a knack for storytelling, making even mundane events sound interesting. Sarah found herself laughing at his description of a stampede caused by a jackrabbit, and the sound of her own laughter startled her. She could not remember the last time she had laughed. "What about you?" Grant asked. "Where are you from originally?" "Missouri," Sarah said. "My family had a farm outside Independence. I met Thomas when he came through looking for settlers to join a wagon train west. We married quickly, maybe too quickly, but we were young and thought we knew everything." She smiled faintly at the memory. "We fought terribly for the first year. Two stubborn people trying to build a life together, but we learned to work as a team eventually." "Sounds like a good partnership." It was. Sarah felt the familiar ache of loss but pushed through it. Thomas was a good man. He worked hard, never complained. He deserved more time than he got. Grant nodded. "Life is not fair that way. My father died young too. Thrown from a horse when I was 12. Left my mother with 4 kids and a failing ranch in Kansas. She tried to keep it going, but without help it just was not possible. We lost everything eventually." "Is that why you became a cowboy? Because you lost the ranch?" "Partly. Mostly I just like the freedom. I like waking up in a new place, seeing new country. But I will admit, sometimes I miss having a home." He looked around the modest kitchen. "This is a good place you have here, Mrs. Abbott." "Worth fighting for." "I intend to fight for it," Sarah said firmly. Over the next 2 weeks, Grant proved himself invaluable. He cut timber and repaired the fence line, working from dawn until dusk. He fixed the broken stall door and the hayloft ladder. He moved the cattle to higher pasture, riding out before sunrise and returning exhausted but satisfied. He was good with the animals, patient and skilled. Sarah watched him deliver her mare's foal, his hands gentle and sure, and felt a rush of gratitude that he had been there. She was not sure she could have managed alone, but more than the physical help, Sarah found herself appreciating Grant's presence. He was good company. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch after dinner and talk. Grant told her stories about his travels, about the places he had seen, and the people he had met. Sarah found herself sharing things she had not talked about in years: her dreams of expanding the ranch, her frustration with the men who thought she needed rescuing, her pride in what she and Thomas had built. "You know what I admire about you?" Grant said one evening as they watched the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. "You did not let grief destroy you. You could have given up, sold this place, gone back to Missouri, but you stayed and fought. That takes real courage." Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I do not know about courage. Stubbornness, maybe. There is not much difference between the two." Grant leaned back in his chair, his long legs stretched out in front of him. "My mother was like you. Stubborn, strong, determined. She did eventually lose the ranch, but not for lack of trying. I always respected that about her." "What happened to her?" "She remarried eventually. A good man, a shopkeeper in town. He adopted us kids and treated us as his own. They are still together, happy as can be. My mother runs that shop like a general commanding troops." Grant smiled at the memory. "I should visit them. It has been over a year." "Why do you stay away?" Sarah asked. Grant was quiet for a long moment. "I suppose because I am afraid if I stop moving, I will have to think too hard about what I want. It is easier to just keep drifting." Sarah understood that. She had been drifting too in her own way. Drifting through grief, through endless work, through the motions of staying alive. Having Grant here had anchored her somehow. It frightened her a little. As the weeks passed, Sarah found her feelings for Grant growing complicated. She caught herself watching him work, admiring the easy strength of his body as he lifted fence posts or gentled a skittish horse. She noticed small things, the way he whistled while he worked, always off-key, how he always made sure the horses had fresh water before he tended to his own needs, the crinkles around his eyes when he smiled. She told herself it was just gratitude, just appreciation for good help. But late at night, lying alone in her bed, she knew it was more than that. She was attracted to him. More than attracted. She was falling for him, and that terrified her. Sarah had meant what she said about never remarrying. Marriage had been hard work, a constant negotiation of needs and wants. And when Thomas died, the pain had been unbearable. She could not go through that again. She would not risk her heart, her hard-won independence for any man. But Grant was different from Thomas. Where Thomas had been serious and driven, focused always on the next goal, Grant was easygoing and present. He found joy in small things. A good meal, a well-trained horse, a sunset. He made her laugh. He listened when she talked and remembered the things she told him. He treated her as an equal, never questioning her decisions or offering unwanted advice. He was, as he had promised, her partner in keeping the ranch running. One evening in early July, a month after Grant had arrived, a storm blew in fast from the west. Sarah and Grant were checking on the cattle in the high meadow when the sky turned ominous, dark clouds roiling overhead. Thunder rumbled through the mountains, and the cattle began to shift nervously. "We need to get them down," Sarah said, her voice tight with worry. "If lightning strikes up here, they will scatter." They worked together to move the herd, pushing them down toward lower ground. The wind picked up, whipping Sarah's skirts around her legs and sending her hat flying. Rain began to fall, first in big scattered drops and then in sheets. Lightning cracked across the sky, brilliant and terrifying, and the cattle began to run. "Go left," Grant shouted over the thunder. "Cut them off before they reach that ravine." Sarah spurred her horse forward, riding hard through the rain. Her heart pounded in her chest, adrenaline singing through her veins. She could see the ravine ahead, a dangerous drop that could kill any animal that went over. She pushed her horse faster, cutting in front of the stampeding cattle, turning them. Grant appeared on the other side, and together they funneled the herd away from danger, guiding them down toward the valley. By the time they got the cattle settled in a low meadow with good shelter, both of them were soaked through and shivering. The worst of the storm had passed, but rain still fell steadily. Grant's horse stumbled on the ride back, and Grant dismounted to check its legs. "He is all right, just tired," Grant called to Sarah. "But I should walk him the rest of the way. You go ahead. Get inside and get dry." "I will wait," Sarah said. "Mrs. Abbott, you are shaking. Please go get warm. I will be fine." But Sarah did not move. The thought of leaving him alone in the storm, even though the danger had passed, filled her with a dread she did not want to examine too closely. "We started together. We will finish together," she said firmly. Something shifted in Grant's expression. He looked at her for a long moment through the rain, and Sarah saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. But he just nodded and began walking, leading his horse. Sarah rode slowly beside him. Back at the ranch, Sarah insisted Grant come inside to dry off. "You will catch your death if you stay in those wet clothes," she said, brooking no argument. "I will make coffee." Grant stood dripping in her kitchen, looking uncertain. It was the first time Sarah had seen him uncomfortable, and it struck her that he had been scrupulous about maintaining proper boundaries. He worked for her, ate with her, talked with her, but he always slept in the barn and never entered her house uninvited. "I have some of Thomas's old clothes," Sarah said, pulling out a trunk from the bedroom. "They might fit you." Change in the back room while I get the coffee going." When Grant emerged in dry clothes, his hair still damp and curling, Sarah felt her heart do something strange in her chest. He looked younger somehow, less guarded. He accepted the coffee gratefully, wrapping his hands around the warm cup. "That was good work today," he said. "You ride like you were born in the saddle." "My father taught me. He said any child of his would know how to handle a horse, girl or not." Sarah poured her own coffee and sat across from him. "We made a good team out there. We did." Grant met her eyes over the rim of his cup. "Mrs. Abbott, I have been thinking. My 2 weeks are nearly up, and I know I said I would move on after that. But if you would be willing, I would like to stay longer, through the summer at least. There is still a lot of work to be done, and I—" He trailed off, looking uncertain again. "And you what?" Sarah prompted, her heart beating fast. "And I like it here," Grant said simply. "I like the work. I like this place. I like you, if I am being honest. You are good company, Mrs. Abbott, best company I have had in a long time." Sarah felt warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the coffee. "I like you too, Mr. Jameson," she admitted, "and I would be glad if you stayed. This partnership has been working well." Grant's face broke into that crooked smile that Sarah had come to treasure. "Partners, then. For the summer at least." "For the summer," Sarah agreed. But even as she said it, she knew the summer would not be enough. She was in deep water now, deeper than she had intended to go. She was falling in love with Grant Jameson, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The summer passed in a blur of work and growing intimacy. Sarah and Grant fell into an easy rhythm, anticipating each other's needs, working together with the smooth efficiency of people who understood each other. The ranch thrived under their joint care. The cattle grew fat on good grass. The fences stayed mended. The buildings got the repairs they had needed for months. But it was the small moments Sarah treasured most. The way Grant would bring her wildflowers when he came back from checking the cattle, presenting them with exaggerated formality that made her laugh. How they would race their horses across the meadow sometimes, whooping like children, all responsibility forgotten for a few precious minutes. The evenings on the porch when they would talk until the stars came out, sharing stories and dreams and comfortable silences. Grant never pushed for more. He never tried to kiss her or make romantic overtures. He kept his distance, respectful of her boundaries. But Sarah saw the way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she was not paying attention. She saw the longing in his eyes and knew it matched her own. It was Sarah who finally broke first. It happened in mid-August, on a day so hot the air shimmered above the ground. They had been working on building a new corral, digging post holes in the hard earth. Sarah brought out water, and they sat in the shade of the barn to drink it. "I have been thinking," Sarah said abruptly, "about what you said, about partnership." Grant looked at her, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Yes. You have been here 2 months now. You have done everything you promised and more. This ranch is in better shape than it has been in a year. I could not have done it without you. You could have. It just would have taken longer." "Maybe, maybe not." Sarah took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "The thing is, Grant, I do not want this partnership to end in the fall. I want you to stay, permanently." Grant went very still. "As your hired hand, as my partner, full partner, we would share the work and share the profits. This would be your ranch as much as mine." The words came faster now, tumbling over each other. "I know I said I would never remarry. I meant it. I am not proposing marriage. But I am proposing a life together, a true partnership. We work well together. We could build this ranch into something really successful. We could be happy. I think we already are happy." Grant set down his water cup carefully. "Sarah." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the sound of it on his lips made her shiver. "Are you sure about this? You said you would never depend on a man again. I would not be depending on you. We would be depending on each other. That is what partnership means." Sarah met his eyes, letting him see the truth in hers. "I trust you, Grant. I trust you with my ranch and with my life. I am just not sure I can trust you with my heart. I cannot marry you. I cannot be a wife again. But I could be your partner if you would have me that way." Grant was quiet for so long that Sarah began to panic. She had miscalculated. He did not feel the same way. He was going to refuse, going to ride away, and she would be alone again. Her heart hammered painfully in her chest. Then Grant smiled, that beautiful crooked smile that lit up his whole face. "Sarah Abbott, I would be honored to be your partner in this life. I do not need a wedding to be happy. I just need you exactly as you are." Relief and joy flooded through Sarah in equal measure. "Really? You are sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything." Grant reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm and strong around hers. "I love you, Sarah. I have loved you since that first day when you stood up to me and told me you did not need my help. I would be your partner, your hired hand, your friend, whatever you need me to be, as long as I can be by your side." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you too. I did not think I could love again, but here we are." Grant leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, he kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Sarah kissed him back, tasting salt and sunshine and hope. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "So we are agreed," Grant said. "Partners for life, no wedding required. Partners for life," Sarah confirmed. They sealed the deal with another kiss, longer this time, and Sarah felt something in her chest that had been clenched tight for months finally relax. She was not alone anymore. She had chosen this, chosen Grant, chosen a partnership built on equality and trust instead of tradition and obligation. It felt right in a way her marriage to Thomas, for all its good moments, never quite had. That night, Grant moved his things from the barn into the house. They did not share a bed yet, both still feeling their way through this new arrangement, but having him under the same roof felt natural. They made dinner together, moving around the kitchen with practiced ease, and ate at the table they now shared. "I have been thinking about the ranch," Grant said over dessert. "If we sell 8 head this fall like you planned, we will make the bank payment. But what if we kept those 8 and instead started breeding horses? Good horses fetch high prices, and you already have excellent stock. We could build that into a real business." Sarah considered this. "We would need to build better facilities, a proper breeding barn, more corrals. We could do it over the winter. I am handy with carpentry, and come spring we could buy a quality stallion, start building a reputation. It would take years to become profitable, but we have years." Grant reached across the table and took her hand. "We have all the time in the world." Sarah smiled. "Then let's do it. Partners in ranching and horse breeding." They spent the rest of the evening planning, sketching rough designs for buildings, discussing bloodlines and markets. It felt good to dream again, to think beyond just surviving to actually thriving. With Grant beside her, anything seemed possible. As autumn came to the San Juan Mountains, painting the aspen trees gold and crimson, Sarah and Grant prepared for winter. They drove 8 head of cattle to market in Durango and got a fair price, enough to make the bank payment with some left over. They spent the money on lumber and hardware, and as the days grew shorter, they began building. The work was hard but satisfying. Grant taught Sarah carpentry, showing her how to measure and cut, how to join boards so they would hold strong. She proved an apt student, and they worked side by side to raise a new barn. Neighbors who had previously offered Sarah unwanted advice or proposals now stopped by to help, drawn by curiosity about her arrangement with Grant. She introduced him simply as her partner, and if people talked, she did not care. Let them talk. She was happy. In November, the first snow came. Sarah and Grant were ready, with firewood stacked high and provisions laid in. They spent the long winter evenings by the fire, Grant whittling while Sarah mended harness leather or worked on the account books. Sometimes they would play cards or read aloud from the few books they had. More often, they just talked, sharing the comfortable intimacy of people who knew each other well. On Christmas Eve, Grant gave Sarah a present, a beautiful bridle he had made himself, the leather tooled with an intricate pattern of flowers. Sarah gave him a wool coat she had sewn in secret, working on it by lamplight after he went to sleep. They exchanged gifts and kisses and promises, and Sarah felt a contentment she had never known before. This was what partnership meant. This was what love should be. Winter deepened. The snow piled high around the ranch house, and for days at a time they were snowed in, just the two of them and the animals. They settled into domesticity with surprising ease. Grant proved to be a decent cook when he tried, and Sarah discovered she did not mind sharing kitchen duties. They divided the work fairly, never keeping score, each doing what needed to be done. One night in late January, during a howling blizzard, Sarah finally invited Grant to share her bed. They made love slowly, tenderly, learning each other's bodies with reverence and care. Afterward, lying in Grant's arms with the wind screaming outside, Sarah felt completely safe for the first time since Thomas died. This was different from what she had shared with her husband. With Thomas, there had always been a slight distance, a sense that they were partners in business more than truly intimate companions. With Grant, there were no walls. He knew all of her, the strong parts and the scared parts, and loved all of her. "Are you happy?" Grant murmured into her hair. "Yes," Sarah said. "Are you? Do you ever miss the traveling, the freedom?" "Not even a little. This is exactly where I want to be." He kissed the top of her head. "You are my freedom, Sarah. You set me free to be myself in a way I never was before." They talked late into the night, making plans for the spring, for the horses they would breed, for the future they would build together. Eventually they fell asleep tangled together, and Sarah dreamed of green meadows and running horses and Grant's smile. Spring came slowly to the Colorado high country, the snow melting in fits and starts through March and into April. As soon as the roads were passable, Grant rode to Durango and came back with a magnificent black stallion, purchased from a breeder passing through on his way to California. The horse was spirited and strong with excellent bloodlines. "He cost most of our savings," Grant admitted, "but he will be worth it, I promise." Sarah ran her hands over the stallion's glossy coat and felt excitement kindle in her chest. "He is perfect. What should we name him? You choose." Sarah thought for a moment. "Storm, because he came through the winter storms to find us." They bred Storm to their 3 best mares that spring, and by summer, all 3 had taken. Sarah and Grant spent the long summer days working the ranch, tending their growing cattle herd, breaking horses for sale, building their business together. Word spread about their operation, and people began to seek them out for well-trained horses at fair prices. In late July, Sarah realized her monthly courses were late. She did not say anything at first, afraid to hope, but when another month passed, she could no longer deny it. She was pregnant. She told Grant one evening on the porch, their favorite place to share news. She had worried he might be upset, that a child would complicate their unconventional arrangement, but Grant's face broke into pure joy. "A baby," he breathed. "Sarah, that is wonderful. We are going to be parents." "I know we have never talked about marriage," Sarah said carefully. "And I still do not want a traditional marriage, but maybe, for the baby's sake, we should make it legal. I do not want our child to face questions about legitimacy." Grant took both her hands in his. "Sarah Abbott, will you marry me? Not because society says we should, not to make me the owner of your ranch, but because we love each other and we want to raise this child together as equals." "Yes," Sarah said, and found she meant it. Marriage to Grant would be different. He had already proven he respected her autonomy, her choices. This would be a true partnership, legally recognized. "Yes, I will marry you." They wed in late August in the small church in Durango, with just a few friends as witnesses. Sarah wore a simple blue dress, not the white of a virgin bride, because she was a widow and pregnant and saw no point in pretending otherwise. Grant wore his best suit and looked so handsome it made her heart ache. They exchanged vows written themselves, promising partnership and equality and love. The minister, an older man with kind eyes, blessed their union. "It is not traditional," he said afterward, "but I can see you two understand something many married couples never learn. Marriage is not about ownership. It is about choosing each other every day." Sarah and Grant moved into the winter with joy. Sarah's belly grew round and heavy. Grant was endlessly solicitous, taking on more of the heavy work, making sure she rested. But he did not treat her like she was fragile. He still asked her opinion on ranch decisions, still valued her judgment. She was still his partner, just a pregnant one. In early February 1879, after a long and difficult labor, Sarah gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him Thomas Grant Jameson, honoring both Sarah's past and her present. Sarah looked at her son's tiny face and felt overwhelming love, but also relief that he was healthy and the birth was over. "He is perfect," Grant whispered, cradling his son with careful tenderness. "You are amazing, Sarah, so strong." "We made him together," Sarah said. "Our son, raised by partners." Little Thomas thrived. He was a happy baby, content to be carried in a sling while Sarah did lighter chores or to nap in a basket in the barn while Grant worked. They hired a young woman from town, a widow herself named Mary, to help with some of the household work so Sarah could stay involved in the ranch operations. Mary was good company, and she treated Sarah with respect, never suggesting she should stay inside and leave the ranch work to her husband. The years passed in a rhythm of work and love and growth. The horse breeding business flourished. Storm's first foals fetched excellent prices, and soon the Abbott Jameson Ranch had a reputation throughout Colorado Territory and beyond. They expanded gradually, buying another 80 acres to the north, building more corrals and better facilities. Sarah and Grant had 2 more children, a daughter named Elizabeth in 1881 and another son named Samuel in 1883. The children grew up understanding that both their parents worked the ranch, that their mother was as much a boss as their father. They learned to ride almost before they could walk, and as they grew, they helped with age-appropriate tasks. Grant proved to be a wonderful father, patient and playful. He taught the children to track animals and read the weather, to care for horses and mend fences. But he also encouraged their education, making sure they learned to read and cipher. Sarah taught them the business side, how to keep accounts and negotiate sales. Together, they raised children who understood the value of hard work and equal partnership. In 1885, the railroad came closer to Durango, opening new markets for their horses and cattle. Business boomed. Sarah and Grant built a proper ranch house, larger and more comfortable than the original cabin, with room for their growing family. But they kept the old cabin as a bunkhouse for hired hands, and sometimes, on summer evenings, they would walk out to it and sit on the old porch, remembering. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked one such evening. They were in their 30s now, settled and successful. "Do you ever miss the traveling, the freedom of your cowboy days?" Grant pulled her close, his arm around her shoulders. "Not for a second. Sarah, you gave me something I did not even know I needed. Purpose, family, home. I love you more now than I did that first summer, and I did not think that was possible. I love you too." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. "I thought I was done with love when Thomas died. I thought I had to choose between independence and companionship, but you showed me I could have both. You have been my partner in every sense of the word, and I always will be." They watched the sun set over the mountains they both loved, at peace with themselves and each other. Their children played in the yard of the big house, their voices carrying on the evening air. The ranch spread out around them, prosperous and well-maintained, a testament to years of hard work and partnership. In 1887, Colorado became increasingly settled, and with statehood secured, law and order came more firmly to the territory. The wild days of the frontier were fading, giving way to civilization. But the Abbott Jameson ranch thrived through the changes. Sarah proved to be a shrewd businesswoman, investing their profits wisely, building relationships with buyers and suppliers. Grant was the heart of the operation, the one who made sure the work got done and the animals were well cared for. Together, they became pillars of the Durango community. Sarah served on the school board, fighting to ensure girls received the same education as boys. Grant helped organize a stockmen's association to protect ranchers from unfair cattle prices. They were respected not just for their success, but for their partnership, the visible equality of their marriage. Their children grew. Thomas, the eldest, showed an early aptitude for horse training and seemed likely to take over that side of the business. Elizabeth was clever with numbers like her mother and loved the business side of ranching. Samuel was still young but showed promise in everything he tried. In the spring of 1889, Sarah and Grant celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary. They had a party at the ranch, inviting neighbors and friends. As Sarah looked around at the gathering, at the good food and good company, at her healthy children and thriving business, at Grant across the room laughing with friends, she felt profoundly grateful. She had lost her first husband and thought her life was over. She had sworn never to remarry, never to risk her heart or her independence again. But then a cowboy with a lame horse had ridden into her life and offered her something different: partnership without ownership, love without loss of self. Grant caught her eye across the room and smiled, that crooked smile she had fallen in love with 11 years ago. He made his way through the crowd to her side. "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Jameson," he said, though they still both used Abbott Jameson officially for the ranch. "Happy anniversary, Mr. Jameson. Any regrets?" "Not a single one. You?" "Only that I did not meet you sooner." Grant kissed her, not caring who saw. "Here's to the next 10 years, partner." "To the next 10 years," Sarah agreed. The party continued around them, full of life and laughter. Their children ran through the crowd, playing tag with the neighbor kids. The ranch house gleamed in the spring sunshine, solid and permanent. The horses grazed in the pastures, sleek and valuable. Everything they had built together, through equality and respect and love. As the evening drew on and guests began to depart, Sarah and Grant stood on the porch of their home, waving goodbye. When the last wagon had rolled away and the children were finally asleep, they sat together on the porch swing Grant had built last summer. "You remember that first night?" Sarah asked. "When you came riding up with that lame horse?" "I remember thinking you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen," Grant said, "and the most fierce. You looked like you would shoot me if I said the wrong thing." Sarah laughed. "I might have. I was so angry at the world back then." "You had a right to be. You had lost everything and everyone kept trying to take what little you had left." And then you came along and offered to help without trying to take anything. You have no idea what that meant to me." "I think I do." Grant pulled her closer. "You gave me a home, Sarah. A real home, something I had been missing all my life. We saved each other, I think." They rocked gently in the swing, listening to the night sounds of the ranch, horses moving in the pasture, cattle lowing in the distance, the wind through the pine trees. After a while, Grant spoke again. "I have been thinking. In a few years, when the kids are older, maybe we should take a trip, see some of that country I used to wander through, but together this time." "I would like that," Sarah said. "Where would we go?" "Anywhere you want. Montana, maybe. I hear it is beautiful. Or we could go back to Missouri, see your family. Or we could go to Kansas, meet your mother and stepfather. You talk about them sometimes. I think it is time." Grant nodded. "That sounds perfect. We will make a plan." But for now, they were content to sit together in the place they had built, the ranch that was testament to their partnership. The moon rose over the San Juan Mountains, silver and full, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its mate. Years continued to pass with the steady rhythm of ranching life. The children grew into capable young adults. Thomas, true to his early promise, became an expert horseman and took over the breeding program, developing new bloodlines that became famous throughout the West. Elizabeth went east for schooling and came back with a head full of new business ideas, modernizing their operations and expanding their markets. Samuel split his interests between the cattle and the horses, becoming the bridge between the two sides of the operation. In 1895, when Sarah was 43 and Grant was 47, they finally took that trip they had talked about. They left the ranch in their children's capable hands and traveled north to Kansas. Grant's mother wept when she saw her son, healthy and happy and clearly loved. His stepfather welcomed them warmly. They spent 2 weeks there, and Sarah fell in love with Grant's family just as he had fallen in love with hers during a visit to Missouri a few years earlier. "You found a good one," Grant's mother told Sarah over tea one afternoon. "I worried about my boy, always wandering, never settling, but he just needed the right partner, someone who would value him for himself, not try to change him." "He is a good man," Sarah said simply, "the best partner I could have asked for, and he clearly thinks the same of you." The older woman smiled. "You know, when I remarried after Grant's father died, people talked. They said I should have stayed a widow, that it was not proper, but I did not care. I chose happiness. I am glad Grant found someone who also chooses happiness over convention." The trip reminded Sarah and Grant that their partnership was not common. Most marriages were not based on true equality. Most women did not have the freedom Sarah had to run a business and make decisions and be truly respected by their husbands. They were lucky, and they knew it. Back at the ranch, life continued. The children eventually married and had children of their own. Thomas brought his wife, a capable rancher's daughter named Catherine, to live on the property. They built a house on the north section and started their own herd. Elizabeth married a banker from Denver, but convinced him to move to Durango, where she opened a livestock auction house that became the most successful in the region. Samuel married late, to a school teacher named Alice, and they settled into the big house with Sarah and Grant, helping to run the central operation. Sarah and Grant became grandparents, then doting grandparents, then elderly grandparents surrounded by a small army of descendants. Through it all, they remained partners. Even as their bodies aged and slowed, they worked side by side, passing on knowledge to the younger generations, offering advice when asked but never forcing their way. In the spring of 1902, Sarah and Grant celebrated their silver anniversary, 25 years of marriage. The party was even bigger than their 10th anniversary, with over 100 people attending. Their children and grandchildren performed a skit about their courtship, exaggerating Grant's cowboy ways and Sarah's stubbornness to great comic effect. Everyone laughed, including Sarah and Grant. "To another 25 years," Grant toasted, raising his glass. "At least," Sarah agreed. They almost made it. In the fall of 1920, Grant was thrown from a spooked horse and broke his hip. He was 72, and the injury was serious. Sarah nursed him through the difficult recovery, but he never fully regained his mobility. He needed a cane to walk and could no longer do the physical ranch work he loved. "I am sorry," he told Sarah one evening. They were in their 70s now, gray and weathered but still sharp-minded. "I am not much of a partner anymore." "Nonsense," Sarah said firmly. "You are exactly the partner you have always been. Partnership is not about what you can lift or how far you can ride. It is about being there, loving each other, facing life together. You have done that every day for over 40 years. 42 years, Grant corrected. "Since the day I rode up with that lame horse." 42 years, Sarah agreed, "and I would not trade a single day of it." Grant reached for her hand, his grip still strong despite his age. "I love you, Sarah. You made my life worth living. And you made mine worth living again when I thought it was over. We did all right, did we not? We did better than all right. We built something real, something lasting." Grant looked out the window at the ranch spreading into the distance. Their grandson was riding the fence line, doing the work Grant used to do. "It will go on after we are gone, everything we built together." "It will," Sarah agreed, "because we built it on partnership and love, and that is a strong foundation." They sat together as the sun set. Two old people who had chosen each other and kept choosing each other every day for over 4 decades. Their children and grandchildren bustled around the ranch, carrying on the work, building their own partnerships and lives. The Abbott Jameson Ranch was thriving, known throughout Colorado and beyond as a place of quality stock and fair dealing. Grant died peacefully in his sleep on a winter morning in 1923. He was 75 years old. Sarah woke to find him gone, his hand still clasped in hers, a slight smile on his weathered face. She did not cry, not at first. She just sat with him as the sun came up, remembering. At the funeral, Sarah stood straight and dry-eyed as they lowered Grant into the Colorado soil he had loved. Their children and grandchildren surrounded her, supporting her, but she did not lean. She was still Sarah Abbott, strong and stubborn and independent. But she was also Sarah Jameson, and she had lost her partner. After the funeral, Thomas, their eldest, approached her carefully. "Mama, we have been talking. You should not be alone. Come live with Catherine and me, or with Elizabeth, or stay here with Samuel and Alice. Do not isolate yourself." "I am not isolating," Sarah said, "but I do not need to be watched over like a child. I am 71 years old. I have buried 2 husbands. I think I know how to handle grief. We just worry." "I know," Sarah softened, "and I appreciate it. But your father and I had 42 years together. I am sad he is gone, but I am also grateful for all the time we had. He would not want me to fall apart, and I do not intend to." She did grieve, of course, but it was different from when Thomas died. Then, she had been young and angry and lost. Now she was old and grateful and complete. Grant had given her a life partnership beyond anything she had imagined possible. They had built a life together based on respect and equality and love. She missed him terribly, but she did not regret a single moment. Sarah lived 4 more years, staying active in the ranch management until the end. She consulted on horse breeding decisions, helped with the account books, and spent time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, teaching them the lessons she and Grant had lived by. Work hard, treat people fairly, and choose partnership over ownership in all things. On a spring morning in 1927, Sarah died quietly in the big house she and Grant had built. She was 75 years old. They buried her next to Grant on a hillside overlooking the ranch, with the San Juan Mountains rising purple and majestic in the distance. Her children gathered after the funeral to read her will. Sarah had been characteristically practical and fair. The ranch was divided equally among all 3 children, with strict instructions that it should stay in the family and be managed as Grant and Sarah had managed it, as partners working toward a common goal, not as bosses and subordinates. But there was one last letter, sealed and addressed to all of them. Thomas opened it and read aloud, his voice catching, "My dear children, if you are reading this, I am gone. I hope I lived long enough to see you all established and happy. I am proud of each of you and grateful for the lives you have built. I want you to know something important. When your father Thomas died, I thought my life was over. I was 26 and certain I would never love again. I was determined to manage alone, to prove I did not need anyone. And then Grant came along and showed me that needing someone was not the same as being weak. He taught me that partnership is not about one person being in charge and the other following orders. It is about 2 equals choosing to face life together, supporting each other, respecting each other's strengths and weaknesses. Grant and I built this ranch together. Every decision was made together. Every success was shared equally. Every hardship we faced side by side. That is what I want for all of you. True partnership in your marriages, your businesses, your lives. Not domination or submission, but equality and respect. Your father used to say I saved him when I let him stay on as my partner. But the truth is, we saved each other. I gave him a home. He gave me hope. Together we built a life that was richer and fuller than either of us could have managed alone. So here is my final advice. Choose your partners wisely, whether in business or in love. And once you choose them, treat them as true partners. Listen to their ideas. Value their contributions. Share your joys and your burdens. That is the secret to a life well lived. I had 50 years with your father, Grant, from the day he rode up with that lame horse until the day I woke to find him gone. They were the best 50 years of my life. I regret nothing. Live well, love deeply, and remember that partnership is the highest form of love with all my heart. Your mother, Sarah Abbott Jameson. Thomas folded the letter carefully, his eyes bright with tears. His siblings were crying openly. They sat in silence for a long moment, thinking about their parents, the example they had set, the legacy they had left. They really did love each other, Elizabeth said softly. I mean, we always knew, but hearing Mama talk about it like that. They were partners, Samuel said, real partners. I've tried to have that with Alice the way they modeled it for us. We all have, Thomas agreed. That is their real legacy, I think. Not the ranch, though that is substantial, but the example they set of what a real partnership looks like. They talked long into the evening, sharing memories of their parents. The way Grant would always ask Sarah's opinion before making major decisions. How Sarah would defer to Grant's expertise with horses while he deferred to her business acumen. The way they would sit on the porch every evening, talking and laughing and just enjoying each other's company. The respect that had infused every interaction, every conversation, every shared glance. As the years passed, and the Abbott Jameson descendants spread across the West, they carried those lessons with them. The ranch remained in the family for generations, managed according to Sarah and Grant's principles of partnership and fair dealing. The story of the widow who said she would never remarry, and the cowboy who asked to be just her partner became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. And on quiet evenings, when the sun set over the San Juan Mountains and painted them gold and purple, You could almost see two figures on the porch of the old ranch house. A woman and a man, sitting side by side, partners in life and in love, their story a testament to the power of choosing equality over convention, partnership over ownership, and love over fear. The ranch still stands today, over 100 years later, a living memorial to the idea that true partnership is the foundation of lasting love. And if you visit on a quiet evening and listen carefully, you might hear the echo of laughter from the porch, the sound of two people who found each other when they needed it most and built a life together that would outlast them both. Sarah Abbott never wanted to remarry. Grant Jameson just wanted to be her partner. Together, they proved that sometimes the best love stories are not about grand gestures or traditional romance, but about two people choosing each other every single day, building a life side by side, equal in all things. That was their legacy, and it endures.